Hello again. We are going to attempt to do this video outside because it's beautiful out, but it is a little windy, so I apologize if there is excessive wind noise. You are going to hear my wind chimes. I don't apologize for that. I'm going to talk a little bit about American Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month and what I've been reading for that month, this month, because it is still May. I technically did not finish, well, there is no technically about it. I did not finish Camp 14, Escape from Camp 14 within May, so it technically does not count for Asian American Pacific Islander Reading Month, but it definitely bled into the month because I did read it at the very end of April, so I'm kind of sort of counting it a little. It's my rules. I can make whatever rules I want. But starting that, we can also kind of include, I guess, Fonda Lee in with Jade City in that. I might as well just wrap up that with the end of April, because I did read Jade City at the very end of April. Well, towards the very end of April. And I have mixed opinions, some of which I think might get me, I don't want to say canceled because I don't believe cancel culture is a thing, but some of them might make some people a little irritated. I was not the biggest fan of Jade City, as I was hoping that I would be, or that I think I was expecting that I would be, which is kind of sad. I do plan on eventually continuing with the series, but I don't know when. I don't know when that desire will sort of show itself. I really enjoyed some of the aspects of the characters, some of the characters that Fonda Lee was writing in this story, and I can really appreciate her writing overall within the scope of the story. And there was a lot of aspects where I could see overall and potentially into the next couple books where we were going, what we were trying to do. For some reason, it just didn't click with me, and I don't really fully understand yet why. I'm kind of stumped by this one, to be completely honest, because in all aspects of the synopsis of this story and the characters and everything I've heard of it over the years, this should have been a story that I really, really, really connected with. This should have been a story that I fell in love with characters that I fell in love with, and I didn't. And I don't quite know why. It's very interesting. Maybe I'll be able to find the words for it at some point, maybe after I read the next installments. I don't know. But I wasn't the biggest fan. Not so much so that it turned me off from the whole series, because I will eventually read it. But I just wasn't as big of a fan as I thought I would be. And then if we go into including that, as well as Escape from Camp 14 into our May reads, which I just am, Escape from Camp 14 is such an amazing story and tale of a North Korean defector who lived not in Pyongyang, in the capital city, or in any one of the favored cities, but rather in one of the working camps. And so his knowledge of even his own country was so stunted and so little that the literal entire world was foreign to him, including the world outside of the camp that he grew up in his own country. And the way that this was written, it was translated, and the way that this was written was done so well in trying to get across, I think, the enormity of some of the things that was happening, or that were happening, and it's done in a way that some of these things are so incredibly horrific, so depraved that, you know, those of us who did not experience a life like this kind of sit back and go, oh my gosh, like people actually do this to other people. And like in the back of our minds, if we know anything about North Korea, we know that this stuff has happened. We know that people have experienced this before. But when you read it of a first-hand account, it sort of hits different in a lot of those ways. But then when you also read it in a way that it's written as it was in Escape from Camp 14, where some of the most horrific things that happened were written as, and then this happened. And that's it. This happened. And you kind of are left to sit and go, okay, wait, but that was horrible. That was awful. Are we going to go into that a little further? And no, you're not. You're just told this is what happened because that's just the way things were. And that's horrifying, extraordinarily sad. And there were so many little bits in this memoir that I made so many tabs where I just remember saying to myself, oh my gosh, wow. And every time I did that, I would tab, and there are so many tabs, and it just seems unreal. It seems outlandish. It seems over dramatic, over dramatized, and it's not, right? It's not. And I don't know, there's just something about hearing these stories directly from the mouths of these people that have experienced this and have gone through this, that it's so heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking, but I think it's something that everybody really needs to hear and understand and read of what is happening and what these people actually truly go through. Because I think most of us know in the back of our minds, we know, but we don't really know. And we all, I think, need to know. It's something that needs to be known. So that was really impactful, that read particularly. And after going and reading Escape from Camp 14, I moved into a smaller novella by a Singaporean author, I believe, The Black Tides of Heaven. And this is by Nyon Yang. And it's different than what I thought it was going to be. I don't know what I was expecting. I didn't realize it was a novella at first, so that was a pleasant surprise. But I didn't also really look into it at all. The premise sounded really interesting, and the cover is beautiful. And so I hopped into that one, and it's got a really interesting writing style in this novella, and one that I found pretty refreshing compared to most writing styles that I've read before. And it felt very almost fairy tale like. It felt very almost like I wouldn't say flowery. It definitely wasn't flowery, but it just had a very sort of mythical feel to it. And I really enjoyed the author's take and how they integrated gender in this story. Everybody who's born starts off as non-binary. There is no gender, but they are literally genderless in their all physical appearance. They have no gender. They don't have hair. They don't have any sort of specific aspects of any sort of gender until they then grow up to a point in their lives, whenever that might be, and they decide whether they want to either stay genderless, non-binary, or whether they want to be a man or a woman or what else. And I thought that was very, very, very interesting, and that was very new to me in the way that was written. And it was very interesting how it was written in the very beginning, when we have our two main characters, our two siblings, and who have not chosen yet, and the story that they're going through, and how you can sort of see the change happening before they then say, this is what I'm choosing, which I also found very interesting and fun to explore and to follow. I believe it is number 1 of a small series, I think. I did like this one enough to continue on. It was different than what I typically would read. Like I said, it felt almost fairy tale like. I don't tend to read fairy tales very often, or at least retellings or reimaginings. So that was very, very interesting. And I liked the characters. I liked the dynamics. I liked the exploration of sort of finding yourself as well, and what that can look like, which I thought was very interesting and well done. So that one I will probably continue on with the other novellas in the series as well. I don't know when, but I liked it enough to keep going. And then we have another memoir, and that is The Girl with Seven Names, and it's another North Korean defector story. I'm sort of, after reading Escape from Camp 14, I'm sort of in the headspace where I want all the memoirs. I want all the memoirs of first-person experience, real-life first-person experience from all different aspects and all different stages. And this is an example where you have the Escape from Camp 14, which was a defector from one of the working camps, like the lowest of the low. And then now we have someone who was very well off, who had a family who, they had an income, was making money, was stable for the most part, and did not receive the same treatment as those who came from the camps. And what that looks like and how that can differ. And obviously it's a first-person account, but it is a memoir, so there is no necessarily comparison, right, between the different levels of, I guess, caste within the caste system. But reading the different accounts, you can see that difference in level and status and what, and you can see it. And this one, it follows our I guess I don't want to say protagonist. I feel so bad, I don't remember her name. Hyun So Lee. And she, is sort of a reckless child, and she makes a decision that changes her life as a teenager. And when you go through and you hear about, defectors and their struggles and what they've overcome, and you think immediately, these people are so much stronger than me. I don't know that I would ever be able to be this strong of a person and go through these things and survive. And then you start to kind of learn about the more intricate details of defecting and what that can look like for some people. And for some people, it looks like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars spent to secure their own passage and safety, or their family or friends or anybody else who they're trying to get out with them. And the people that take advantage of these people, you would want to think that with everything that we all know, everybody in the world knows about North Korea and the things that North Koreans have been through and that are still going through, the empathetic good in me wants to believe that everybody involved in helping these people escape are good people doing it out of the kindness of their heart, because they understand that these people are in a position in life that they need help. And the goodness in me is, it just wishes and hopes that the people who are there to help are there to help simply because they want to help. And that's not true in every aspect. And you learn about the people who are there to take advantage, and who do take advantage, who are taking advantage of these people in their situation. And it makes me sad, and it makes me want to do something, and I just don't know what I can do to help in any aspect. And yeah, the world is unfair. And like I said with Escape from Camp 14, I know that. We all know that. But hearing about it and seeing a first-hand account of it, it's really eye-opening. It's really eye-opening because both of these stories, these memoirs, when I was in high school, I had just graduated, or I was, I think, a year out from graduating. These people were fighting for their lives. They were literally trying to survive and live to the next day and find the money to carry on and the strength to carry on and the hope to carry on. And I was planning a graduation party, or I was 10 years old, wondering what I was going to get for my birthday. And they were knee deep in a frozen river in the middle of December, picking up rocks. And it just puts things into perspective and makes me really grateful for the things that I have and the people that I have in my life. But it also kind of makes me want to find some way to do something and to help. And I think that's important too. I think it's important that not only do we learn about things, but what are the things that are available that we can do to help or just to raise awareness. And I think part of that is reading memoirs about people's stories. So I'm going to keep reading North Korean memoirs, and I'm probably going to filter some other memoirs into my reading at some point. But yeah, it's very eye-opening, and they're just beautifully done and beautifully written. What else that's what I've gotten through so far. The other things that I'm working on is I'm going to put a picture of it up here. I think if editing Casey has been doing her job, she's been putting pictures up here the whole time. But I am also getting through The Floating World by Axio. It's a brand new release by Axio. I really enjoyed the Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. It was a very Studio Ghibli-esque, adorable little standalone, and I loved it. So I'm very looking forward to getting through this book as well. I'm going to work on that a little bit more today. I was getting through The Last Dragon of the East by, I think it's Katrina Kwan, and I'm not so sure about this one. I might soft DNF it for now. It's one of those where I am less than a third of the way in, and I already know the twist. There's been some sort of forced comedy that it's just not really catching me and doing anything for me. And I don't like knowing where things are going less than a third into the book. And that kind of puts me off. So I have soft DNF'd it for now. I might try to squeeze it in at the end of the month, depending on if I get through The Floating World and another potential audiobook, which is The Island of the Sea Women by Lisa C. I have been recommended this by Tori and over at Tori Talks, and she speaks very highly of it. And so I do think it's going to be something that I'm really going to enjoy. I do have it on audio. I might throw that in during my working hours while I am working and get through that audio while I physically read Axio's The Floating World and try to get that done before the end of the month as well, so I can knock out 2 more books before the end of the month. But if not, that's okay, and I'll just bring them over into the next month if I can. Welcome back. I didn't know if I was going to make another part of this video before the end of the month, but here we are. I have another day and a half left of AAPI month to try and finish a few things or get something else within this next day and a half to wrap up the month. And I literally just finished Lisa C's The Island of Sea Women. And the emotions in this book, it's hard to sort of talk about, and I'm going to be brief because I don't want to make this an entire book review. But this is a generational story that starts with Young-suk, our main character, from when she's later on in life. We get flash forwards and then the flashback. The main part of the stories in the flashbacks that follow her life from childhood all the way to what would be present day, through the Japanese colonization of Jeju Island in Korea, and through World War II, and then the Korean War, and how that affected everyone. And at first, this is a very, it's almost like a very just comforting story of a young girl growing up, learning her family's traditions, learning what it means to be a provider for her family, learning what it means to be a woman and a best friend. And then the war starts filtering in, and it was probably about halfway through that I remember I said to myself, you know, this is interesting because it's almost speculative fiction in a way that we have this story with these people and these characters, and the war is over here, right? Everything that's happening with politicians and the war and the fighting, that's over there. And we're hearing it through bits and pieces of rumors and you know, the collective talk of people, and how that just kind of makes, you know, snakes its way through the population, but it's still over there. And then it hits here. And we have the bulk of our story that's wrapped up with Young-suk and her best friend Miha, who is a Japanese orphan, I guess you could say. Well, she is an orphan. Her parents, I believe both of her parents were killed. And they become best friends, and it is a cultural look in the diving women, the Haenyeo, of Jeju Island in Korea, and the friendship that they have growing up, and then the war hits and the tragedies that happen during the Japanese colonization, and then World War II, and then what happens to the Korean people when the Americans infiltrate. And I think it said at one point here, they took one colonizer and just replaced it with another. And forewarning for anyone who might read this, there are a lot of triggers in this. There is a lot of really, really hard, deep, emotional themes in this book that just hit in a place that you it's kind of like when you're reading the memoirs and you go, there's just no way that there are humans out there that are this cruel, right? There's just no way that there are actual people out there who are this evil and cruel. And it's hard to comprehend and wrap your mind around accepting that there are other human beings, the same human beings that we are, who are so sadistically evil to do the things that they have done. Whether they had free reign and permission to do them or not, the fact that they just did it and it brought them joy, or it kind of blows my mind a little bit, and it makes me very sad. But sad in a way that I think is important to feel, because these are actual lived experiences that people went through. These are experiences and things that happen to real people, and it does no one any good to pretend that it didn't happen, to pretend that these atrocities, they're just horrors that, you know, they were in the past. They're not in the past. They actually happen to people in the year of our Lord 2025. And it's something that I think that really we need to be reminded of sometimes, that our lives here are just very, very privileged in a lot of ways to what a lot of people have experienced or maybe even are experiencing. And this book really focuses on an aspect of friendship that's hard for me, because you have two young girls who grow up very similar to me and my best friend, who grew up very close, doing everything together for a very long time. And then circumstance and life separate them, and then something happens that cuts that relationship. And I stop and I think, what would I have done, or how would I have felt, or how would I have reacted had this been me and her in our lives? And would I have allowed anger and betrayal, the feelings of betrayal and hatred, to completely take over my life to the point where I stopped seeing reason, and I stopped being able to think critically and maybe even logically about certain things, and I stopped being able to hear other people's voices? Would I have allowed that to happen? And I'd like to think to myself, no, but I also have not experienced anything that Young Suk has experienced, and so I don't know. And that almost kind of scares me a little bit, in that I don't know how I would react, because I have such a close relationship with my best friends that I feel like I know myself enough to say I would never act like that. I would never do that. I would never throw away this precious relationship and to this person in my life, no matter what. But I don't know. And to watch Young Suk go through this entire lifetime of holding on to anger and hurt and not being able to forgive someone who she loved so much in her life, only to reach a point at almost the very end of her life where she's finally able to step back and say, I'm ready to listen to other voices. I'm finally ready to allow people into my life to maybe speak to me in a way that might help me see things differently. And when she does that, it's how much have you lost? How much have you allowed to pass you by? And how much have you missed because you just could not stubbornly allow yourself to listen and forgive? And forgiveness is hard, right? Forgiveness is not easy, especially with the things that people in World War II and colonization have gone through. Forgiveness is not easy. But when you get to a point in life where you have to realize that your entire life the later half of your life has gone by, and what good has holding on to that come to? And what have you lost because of it? And that's that hit me. That hit me really hard, especially when it comes to the friendship aspect, because I am someone who holds my friends so close to me. They mean everything to me. I have very few of them because I am someone who values quality over quantity. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with having a lot of really close friends. I am also an introvert, so let that just be an overarching, let that be something that is also taken into consideration. I am an introvert. I enjoy greatly my me time and my alone time. And so I have very few very close friends, and I hold them very, very dear and close to my heart. And so the friendship aspect of this book, I was very, very conflicted at times on how I felt about what was happening, because I kept putting myself in the position and kind of asking myself, what would have been my reaction? What would I have said, and what would I have done or felt? And trying to figure that out in my own brain and my own heart. And that, I think, is an introspective look that a lot of people maybe sometimes struggle with a little bit, and it gets kind of uncomfortable, understandably so, because these are hard themes and these are hard questions to ask ourselves on what would we do, and then how would we feel about ourselves depending on that answer. So if I absolutely highly recommend it. It's 5 stars without a doubt. I listened to the audiobook for the most part, but then I did go ahead and sort of tandem read the very last, I probably tandem read the last, 60 to 90 pages or so. And I will definitely be reading more of Lisa C. I think I'm gonna probably have to take breaks in between a few of these if they're anywhere along the lines, sort of as this one when it comes to theme and topics. So keep that in mind if you are interested in reading this, but I do think it is a in-depth look at friendship and the life of a woman who went through a lot, the life of a woman who from childhood lived a very harsh and unforgiving life when it comes to providing for her family and learning what it means to be a woman, growing up from a child to a woman, and then all of the other trials and tribulations that you go through when it comes to war and how that affects you in your life, in your family and people, and then the atrocities of humanity, even if it is your own countrymen and not just invaders, and how that is just very sad. Fantastic read. Hard, but fantastic read. So what I have left is, I know I had mentioned prior that I was working on The Floating World by Axio. I have not gotten as far into that as I wanted to by this point. I do not think I could finish it today, so I am putting that one just aside for probably another month maybe, because June is a pretty full month for me for different reasons. It's not a DNF, it's not a soft DNF, I'm just setting it aside for a minute. I have soft DNF'd Katrina Kwan's The Last Dragon of the East. I don't know when I'm gonna pick that one back up again. I will in the future, not getting rid of the book, but I don't have any excitement to read it right now. So what I'm gonna try to do is, for the very last day and a half of the month, I grabbed completely unexpectedly this little gem. If Cats Disappeared from the World by Genki Kawamura. It is a translated work by a Japanese author. My best friend, we had sort of a live vicariously through me Barnes & Noble trip the other day with each other, where we were she went to go write a little bit, I went to go look for some brand new released K-pop albums, and we were like, let's go to Barnes & Noble at the same time, even though we're an hour and a half away, and we'll just hang out and text and see what we find. And she found this one, and we're both massive cat lovers, and so she sent me a picture, and she said, look how cute this is, and the title, of course, kind of grabbed her eye as well. So I went in and checked it out in the fiction section, because I typically don't read fiction. Lisa sees this and any kind of memoirs. They are all brand new to me. This is the first time in my life I have ever actually picked up anything really outside of fantasy, urban fantasy, a YA fantasy, and then there's just been a few little books here and there that I kept from school that I enjoyed. So this is a brand new world from me, and I read the back of this, I read the synopsis, and it honestly sounds like it's gonna be an absolutely destructively sad book. And for some reason that pulls my interest. It always pulls my interest when it comes to TV shows and movies. If I feel like I'm going to bawl my eyes out, I am there for it. I don't know what that says about me. I don't know if I should be concerned about that, but I am sort of always up to a story that I feel is potentially gonna rip my heart out. And this one feels like it might potentially rip my heart out. It is about a postman who finds out that he has a very, very short time left to live. And from what it sounds like, he's granted an extra day of life for every one thing in the world that he makes disappear. And so I don't know exactly where that's gonna go, but he has a cat. And if you watched my last video, I think you'll understand and feel why this might be a good sort of grieving, potentially, book to use to help in that process. So that's kind of what I'm reading it for. Also, it does sound interesting, and I do think I'm gonna like it, but I'm kind of hoping that maybe it'll help in that grieving process while also fitting into the Pacific Islander translated, Asian translated works as well for the month. I should be able to easily start this and finish it tomorrow, if not finish it all tonight, depending on when I start it and how into it I get. I do have a lot of things I have to get done this weekend. But yeah, this is very interesting and very new to me on what I typically read. So I will probably check in with thoughts on that one before ending this whole video, this whole series of books that I've been talking about that I've been reading for the month. And yeah, it feels very good. So thanks for joining me for this section, and I will probably check back in just a bit and see you soon. Hello again, back for the last update for the month and for this vlog. I finished last night, which was the very last day of May. I had a sort of impromptu buddy read that I wasn't planning with Tori. We read If Cats Disappeared from the World by Genki Kawamura. Mentioned to Tori that I was trying to get one last final read in and a small little book in before the end of the month. And so we started some sprints in her Discord, and I had mentioned that I was reading that specific book. And she said, I have that book. Do you want to do a buddy read? Sure, let's do a buddy read. So spoilers, but not spoilers. We both rated it 3 stars. But I feel like there were a lot of different points the author was trying to make, and instead of focusing on some of the main ones that he was really, I think, at the very end, really focusing on, we kind of went off on a few tangents that took me out a little bit of, okay, so what is the point that we're trying to get across here? Because I feel like, based on the synopsis and the title, it's this, and there's altogether not enough cat in this book to kind of fulfill my expectations of what the title was telling me that I was to expect, and there definitely wasn't enough cat to fulfill my expectations from the title. And then from the synopsis, there still wasn't enough cat. I think there were just a few too many points that the focus wasn't able to come in and hone on the more important ones that the author was trying to make. We were just on the cusp of kind of making some of those points. We never quite got there for a few of them. So that kind of was a little bit of a letdown. There were a few parts in there too where I kind of thought to myself, are you sure you're a cat person? Because if you were a cat person or just an animal person, I think in general, I don't know that you would be saying this thing. Because it's completely opposite of my personal beliefs on animals and cats, and just in general the animals that we have for ourselves as people and the relationships that we form with them. But it didn't really feel very much like it was coming from a cat person, and so that was kind of confusing a little bit, and definitely didn't agree with one of the very specific things that the author was putting in there with this cat, because there was cat, there just wasn't enough cat. So I rated it 3 stars. There were a few little bits in there that kind of made me think, and there was definitely a part in there that made me cry. But that's, I think, personal to my own experience, being what I've just recently gone through, and I don't know that would kind of hit anyone really much else as hard as it did me, which is completely fine. And obviously that's a subjective experience to myself. So for me, that part made me tear up, maybe kind of that it hit, but it might not for just the lay person or even just a regular normal cat lover. It might not hit like it hit me. But yeah, that was the very last read of the month of May. We are now into June. I'm going to dive into my next book, which is an ebook, and we'll just see where we go from there. I don't know if I'll have many updates through June because I'm kind of working on very specific projects that are for very specific things going forward. Might not be another update for a little bit, but that's okay. Maybe I'll throw something in there here and there about some other topics. But thanks for joining me on this vlog, I guess we'll end up calling it. And I hope you are having a beautiful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.